All right, let's try to keep this simple. I know a lot of us have problems, learning both Photoshop and Illustrator together. And Illustrator is pretty daunting. And so, what I want to do for those of you that are struggling with this assignment, emotional contrast, is to come up with some quick solutions so you get a good passing grade, if not more, right? I want to use two tools. But first of all, for emotional contrast, you have two emotions. So, I might have, I might say that's love and I might say that's hate. So it's abstract, right? It's non-representational. So let's use the square. First of all, we always have to be looking at our layers. We've already got some here. Let's flatten it. Go up here. Let's flatten this. I don't want the brush. Hold on. All right. So 4 down. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. Sorry. Rectangle tool. We've used this before. Now, what color? Notice how these down here, these are your paint chips. These are both on no color, right? So let me just draw, because part of this assignment is to not just have it floating in space. I mean, anybody can put a smiley face right here and a frowny face and say, oh, it's about happy and sad, right? Okay, so let's change this one. Let's change the background layer. Let's change it to, what do we feel like today? Oh, that's a very terrible green. That was actually a nice little forest green. Okay. So, foreground color. Boy, that is a bright green. All right. So now, for some of you, what's the next thing we want to do? We want to subdivide that space, because we don't want it to just be, generally speak, for this class, I'm just talking for this class, not in your own artistic endeavors, but just for this class, in terms of, exploring, like I'm your personal trainer, right? Let's do that one. Exploring the tools of composition and making them do what we want. Okay, so here I've made a square. I'm just using the square tool. That's the point here. I made a square that's blue and I made a square that's green. If I want to change the color, I double click the color chip. I go over here and I make it, slightly darker blue, which I don't like. All right. Okay. Here's the first problem. Well, first of all, you see these little handles over here? I can make this, really fit if I want, which would be nice. Just so you know, you have control. The thing, here's the problem with learning this software is people have a horrible experience doing it. And this software is actually a wonderful experience. It's the most valuable tool. Look at, I can't do this with paint, right? I can only mess around with these kinds of compositions digitally. So the problem with this is that we have a grass and we have a sky. That's too representational. So let's reverse them. Well, that looks like a C. In other words, we don't want to have representation in here, okay? So let's say I want it to be green with that blue. So then I go up to the edge and I make it bigger, right? So those are the squares. You can move them around. And let me show you my last trick, which you can use forever. Hold down, with the selection tool selected, hold down your Option key or your Control key. You see how that little arrow turns into, there's a white arrow behind it. Hold it down, hold down your Option key. You've got an exact duplicate of what you were looking at there. All right? So, for example, if I went like this, held down my Option key with my Move tool selected. You see how I can just copy. I can copy and paste. I'm creating a whole nother composition here on the fly. So let's bring this down. Let's focus on the next tool. And if I want to change that color, what do? I go over here, I double click it. What do we want? Another green? Do we want a yellow? The problem with Illustrator is it doesn't show you a preview, which I don't like, personally. I mean, I personally would rather have these be, you know, in the oranges. Double click in the earth tones. Double click. All right, there's our earth tones. All right, let's create a new layer. Remember, this is like tracing paper. Layers aren't difficult. Layers are your tracing paper that you're drawing on, and you can move them down and move them up and do whatever, right? So let's think about abstraction, non-representation. So maybe I want to compare order and disorder, or order and disarray, or, you know, peace and war, or whatever, right? So how do I create order? Through repetition, through symmetry maybe, but not necessarily. So, for example, I can duplicate this, bring it down, hold down my shift key, right? If I want to make it symmetrical in terms of the proportions of which I'm diminishing it. Move the arrow keys, right? And then double click. And what I want is something a little redder. So let's go to that. Hold down your option key, right? Hold down your shift key, bring that down. Arrow keys. Double click. Right? So let's imagine that we continue on, and the only tool we've used is the rectangle tool. We've made it bigger, we've made it smaller, we've changed the color. So now you get into what your idea is. Is it repetition? Is it order? Is it duplication? Is it sameness? Is there any asymmetry? What kind of movement? Is it static? Right? So let's do disorder. Okay? We'll create a new image here. So here we are. Now, the first thing with this particular assignment, if you will, is that it not just be, oh, hold on. Okay, so we've created a new canvas, and we want to do disorder, and we've selected, sorry, I digressed there. We want to select the Paintbrush tool. You know, if you have the blob brush is okay, but let's use Paintbrush, and the color that it's going to be is the color that's in the background. So this is black. Now, instead of painting right on the canvas, let's create another layer. You know, we can name it, or we can just draw on it, right? And that way we can make a mark and we can turn it off, okay? So now, before we had order, geometry, repetition, sameness, evenness, a sense of peace, like, you know, walking through a Greek amphitheater. We want disorder. So before we used the rectangle tool. Now we're going to use the paintbrush tool. Okay. Now, new layer. Okay. Let's turn it on. I want to get rid of it, so I do Control A, which is select all, A for all, and I hit delete. Now I'm still on that layer. Let's look at the stroke. Think of your pencil. Do you want your pencil sharpened, or do you want it dull? So here, I'm going to turn it up a little bit. Do you want it uniform? I want it not uniform. Okay. Round. I'm going to use ragged. All right, so let's make a mark. Nice. So we want disorder, correct? And we want something that isn't just floating in the middle. It is creating a composition, dissecting the canvas. All right, so let's make our stroke bigger. All right, but before we do that, let's create another layer, because with that way we have a whole nother thing that we can work on. So this is where disorder comes into play. Now look, so I make it something called disorder. Now remember, over in properties, let's see here, tool options. You have your accurate versus smooth. Okay, what I am looking for is, okay, sorry, I was in the wrong place. I want to look at opacity. So let's make something here that is, okay. You see the opacity there? Of course, we have to make something here. Oh, sorry, we have to select it. So once you select the item, you can change the opacity. Let's change the opacity of this one. So you select it. You go down here. I was up here in properties. Sorry. I'm not in Illustrator a lot, actually. And then you're going to change the opacity. The other thing is, we already know, you hold down the Option key with your Move tool selected, and you can change this around, right? So you can start having, instead of order, you can start having disorder. Remember to reference the edges. Remember to push it as far as you can. Hold down the Shift key to maintain proportions. Double click the hand to center things. Option delete, or option minus to shrink it down. Okay. Select tool to select. Okay, and when you're ready to, I could play with this forever, but when you're ready to export, you say, file, export. I like Save for Web Legacy. That's what I'm used to, because I'm legacy. Okay, so we're going to make sure it's a PNG 24. Okay, the width is okay. It's a little small, but that's fine. And we're going to make sure it's cropped. Look, you see how it's cropped here? And we're going to open up this PNG. Okay, we're going to save it. We'll call it test. No, we'll call it disorder. Okay, and here I've opened up in Photoshop our file that we created, and you can double click the hand. You can hit Apple minus, or Control minus, up. You can use your zoom tool. We can zoom in and we can see we don't have those edges that you see here in Illustrator cropping out. Once we export it correctly in Photoshop, there it is. Okay, I hope this has helped you. All you need, in summary, is the shape tool and your paintbrush, and you can, just telling the program what options you want, the width of the brush, what color you want it to be. It's your ideas. The only thing limiting you are your ideas. It shouldn't be the technology, because the technology should be extremely fun and totally stimulating to you as artists.